Cyber season is in full swing with our pals Isotope and Native Instruments.
Get huge discounts on everything from Guitar Rig 7,
Complete 14 bundles,
and one of our favorites here at the Cult and Culture Podcast,
Ozone 11 EQ. Go to isotope.com
and nativeinstruments.com
to feast on the audio goodness. Yum.
You can also get additional savings on other softwares by using the code
RUIN10.
DistroKid now also has a motherfucking app. The DistroKid app is available for iOS and Android. You can download it at distrokid.com/app/, or you can get it in the App Store.
Fuck. All right, we're rolling.
Planet B
Presents.
Cult and Culture Podcast.
Welcome to episode 18 of the Cult and Culture Podcast. I'm Justin Pearson.
This is Luke Henshaw.
This episode features Brian Amalfitano and Tommy Meehan, both of Def Club, which was an interesting and sort of odd thing for me to kind of initiate. But awesome dudes, awesome guitar players.
Great.
Wild, like how they work together, man. They have like the craziest chemistry, and I don't know who would have thunk. It worked out great. Having them in a band together, but it also worked out awesome to have them on a podcast. So, I guess my initial idea was to like discuss their insane pedal collections. Their pedal boards are wild, and then how they kind of approach music and all their various projects, not just Def Club, but yeah, I don't know. It was cool to kind of dive into that, and also they have really strange. In my opinion, strange influences, which, you know, I guess when you know the influences, then you can kind of go like, oh, I see where that's coming from. If you didn't know, though, you
wouldn't guess it.
And also, too, I kind of wish I didn't know sometimes.
I know. Tommy's is pretty weird. I was like, whoa. But then I got it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, also, too, the fact that Tommy's been part of scoring really cool cartoons makes a lot of sense as to why he does what he does or how he does what he does. It all kind of seems encompassing. Cool. Okay, so we're gonna dive into this podcast and explore these guys' guitar technical abilities. So without further ado, here we go. Hello, gentlemen of Def Club.
Yo.
Would you like to introduce yourselves and maybe give your a brief, relevant background of each of you, your places on the planet, in the universe?
I'm Brian Amalfitano. I used to be in a bunch of bands. I guess I played in power violence bands and things like that before. I was in Antichrist Demon Corps, and I've been playing music for a good couple of decades now, not making money. So, yeah, life's good.
Oh, so you're a professional.
I'm a professional, yeah. I'd like to think so, yeah.
You run a record store too, right?
I do have a record store. I have a Midnight Hour Records. My brother also has his record store. He's in San Fernando. I'm in San Gabriel Valley. And we both played in Antichrist Demon Corps. So we sort of started playing sort of punk rock in like early... like 2003, something like that. I think the band started in La Puente, San Gabriel Valley. And it just sort of started with, backyard shows, punks and cholos and rockers and all that shit. And
the cool shit.
Yeah, the cool shit. You know, when people were playing power violence a lot in our area and sort of Inland Empire, like Riverside, Fontana, a lot of backyard parties and things like that. And everyone on meth. So,
yeah.
It made it interesting. It was like, let's play everything really fast, but everyone has a short attention span because, they're all tweaked out. So
your brother's straight edge.
He's straight edge, yeah. And I was straight edge till I was about 25 as well.
If you're not now, you never were.
Yeah, I know. I'm a poser. Something, but, there was a lot of that. I think it was, there was Demon Crew and Chuff Crew was part of the IE and all these, like, different punk things. El Monte and Baldwin Park was a little bit more like street punk and like Misfits and sort of just Ramones and basic punk like that. But it's true, I wasn't straight edge enough. You know, it was like, oh, like you're straight edge, but you don't listen to this music. So how are you straight edge? I was like, I didn't know how to be anything about music. So it started with that, playing in punk bands. But punk, I think, was more, to me at least, just do it yourself or do whatever you like and listen to whatever you like. Real punk, I think, you know. But most punks at that point, especially in, I guess, junior high and high school, you just sort of, if you don't look a certain way, you know, you don't fit into that. If you're not, you know, dressed, if you're listening to hip hop, you have to dress a certain way. If you're listening to punk, you have to dress a certain way. If you're a raver, and I just kind of didn't fit into any of that, but I liked a little bit of everything.
So you grew up in the Inland Empire?
No, just sort of playing shows for some San Gabriel Valley. So mostly, I grew up in La Puente, Azusa, Covina, West Covina. We moved around a lot, and then we moved to Argentina. My family's from Argentina, so.
So like for me, I'm sorry because we live in awesome San Diego, and LA is just a big thing for us up there, all of it. But I know like Inland Empire was always like the Man is the Bastard people and stuff like that. So is that still part of? Because that scene was pretty diverse or open to weird things.
I think it's just also more
the next generation or something maybe.
San Gabriel Valley in the Inland Empire was a lot of Latinos, and so it was a lot of diverse music, you know. But you'd have punk, and then you'd go to a quinceañera and, you know, have norteños and all sorts of different things, and so you were exposed to a lot more music, I think, you know, a lot of oldies, a lot of everything. Whereas
like cholo shit.
Yeah. Whereas maybe other areas are more hardcore. I don't think we were as hardcore, you know, as hardcore punk in that scene or whatever. And it's, you know, we never really associated with LA because LA was further for us. You know, we would go to like, we'd take buses, you know, if there was like protests and stuff like that or shows or whatever. But even then, I think we did more like Pomona, you know, go to the Glass House. And I think my first show was at the Glass House, and it was Total Chaos and Narcoleptic Youth and Litmus Green and like all these punk things. Yeah. And actually my mom, my brother went to that show, and my mom was like, oh, you should go in there just in case he gets in a fight or goes into the pit or goes in whatever. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Like protect him, you know? So it was kind of that. And it just started from there. And then we got more into like crust stuff and dystopia and like sort of weird stuff. And he sort of went, you know, more power violence and more punk, and I went different ways. You know, I got into like no wave and experimental stuff, and you know, and I thought like that's
which definitely comes out in your current band.
Yeah, I try to put that a lot into Def Club. You know, sort of weird chords and weird sounds and glitchy stuff, and sort of just things that you wouldn't expect in punk because it's supposed to be so fast, you know, and so now you're doing fast stuff with your feet as well.
And there's not a lot of time for the like cadence of an effect.
Yeah. Usually, you know, if you're playing like psychedelic or experimental, you have this drone, or you could play a 4-minute song, 7-minute song, whatever, and you have time for these effects. But in our songs, it's like, oh, that song's a minute long, and how are you going to put all these effects in there and make it, you know, make it sound organic or you know, natural, you know, to the song, not just like you put a bunch of effects on it for the sake of effects or whatever. So
now that you've just taken up the entire podcast,
like,
how'd you meet this guy? And Tommy, do you want to just roll with it and let us know what you, because
how did you and I meet, Brian?
Def Club, we got our first show because of the Manx. And Tommy was in the Manx, and you guys had done stuff before, so
so Justin and I had met
peeing together.
Oh yeah, the very first time we met, we were
Cartoon
peeing
Network.
right next to each other. Yeah, Cartoon Network. Justin came in to do a voice for this show that I composed music for, called Uncle Grandpa, and we wanted to get Justin on. We liked the Locust, so we said we should get Justin.
That was like a dream come true. But it's funny because we first met, I was like, I didn't know who this guy was, like this metal dude like peeing, and you're just like, I forgot what you said, but it was pretty awkward. You're like, I love the Locust or something like that. And I'm like, and my dick is in my hands.
It was probably something like that.
He flushed it for you.
And then we went into this recording booth at Cartoon Network, and you did your thing, and I hung out, and it was fun. And that's how we met, and kind of You got hip to the Manx at that point.
I already knew about the Manx, but like never really knew you guys. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it was just like this weirdo
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did that band for like 10 years. And yeah, that's how we met Def Club. So we had this record release show. It was your guys' first show, right?
It was our first
Yeah.
show. We played at the Bootleg Theater, RIP.
And you guys were nice enough to let us play.
Oh, yeah, we were stoked on it.
I think at that point we only had the EP and we only had like 5 actual songs, and we maybe played 9 songs that day, and 4 of them we kind of just bullshitted our way through.
Yeah.
Which you could maybe tell some of us bullshitted more than others. But and then Tommy had offered to start playing with us as a sub. So we were like, you know, if the possibility of going on tour arose, we might need other members because not all of our members could tour for a month or 2 months. People have jobs and, you know, shit like that. Most of I think we don't, but the rest of the people have jobs. And so Tommy started filling in on bass.
Yeah, that's how I learned all the songs. But then I learned them on the guitar, and then I came in and just started playing guitar.
So for me, like, it was weird because I went to the rehearsal and you were I don't even think you were playing bass, actually.
I wasn't plugged in. I was
yeah,
just chilling.
But I was like, this guy is the dude. We need him in our band. He's super weird. And like, you know, no offense to the other people or the person that we don't have in the band, but I just thought like, this guy is the coolest. Like, let's get him in the band. And so it wasn't, I don't know, like, I guess it was like a premonition, but it wasn't until like a recent rehearsal that we had where there was, and this is no diss on Jason's bass playing or being a bassist in the band, because I love bass, but like, he wasn't there, and it was just the 2 guitars, and it was fucking crazy to like stand there and have your guys' guitar stuff be stereo in my ears. I was like, I've never heard this. Like, right. I mean, I heard the record and stuff, but even the new songs and stuff, but like, it was incredible to hear the stuff happening, and I was like, it's next level. I don't think a lot of for me, like, in you know, like, maybe in an example would be like in the Locust, where like everything's just kind of weird, but it wasn't like 2 guitar players like playing harmoniously. Like in the Locust, it's like we're all trying to find a frequency that we can sit in nicely, because everyone's like, you know, there's bass and synth, which can kind of compete, and then I'm always trying to like, well, I'll just go over here, and it's weird. So it was really nice, because I've never been in a band with 2. Oh no, I've been in a band with 2 guitar players, but never with like a ton of effects and stuff. And it was just really awesome to hear that. And I think that it made me appreciate you guys even more than I already did. I was just like, you could tell that a lot of effort went into bringing the 2 strange sounds together.
Yeah.
I think Tommy put in a lot of work. I mean, the first EP I tracked all by myself, and I just sort of put a bunch of pedals together, and it came out the way it came out, and I love the record. But the second one, Tommy had already been learning a lot of stuff, and we were talking a lot about pedals and how I use mine and how he should use his to sort of contrast that as well. And you know, he just can geek out with me on pedal stuff, you know, for hours, and just get weird sounds, and it's like, oh cool, like, yeah, if you do this weird thing, I could do that. And so he's sort of like a, you know, a pedal guy like I was, where again, prior when we played at the Bootleg, like, you know, our former member didn't have the pedals, that, you know, or didn't really. One thing about Power Violence was, even in ACXDC when I was playing the band, is like I didn't have effects pedals at all,
because it wasn't like necessarily acceptable for you.
It's not part of Power Violence, you know. It's just sort of plug into whatever amp might be there at that show and just play a distortion and as fast as you can, you know. And it's not even super tight at, you know, it's not like metal or something where you have to be proficient and sort of, you know, technical. It's just play fast and slow down and then play fast again. And but Tommy brought a lot of precision into Def Club, and a lot of the extension of my pedal board, and sort of, you know, complementary things. So
you're both pedophiles.
Yeah. Hopefully that was caught the right way. pedal files.
That's a new T-shirt.
Yeah.
That could be our next tour T-shirt, probably.
Pedal files.
Yeah. We have 2 pedal files in our band. Can you pick them?
Dancing on the edge there.
I can't claim that. I think I forgot who called Nick Zinner a pedophile. It had something to do with like Nick Cave or something. I don't know. Someone in Nick Cave's band maybe called Nick Zinner a pedophile, and I was like, that is the fucking funniest thing I've ever heard. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't even know where to start because pedals are awesome, and it's such a cool thing that I think a lot of people maybe don't explore that much, and like finding strange sounds, because some of the stuff that you guys come up with isn't I mean, there's melody or there's harmony in it, but it's not like, oh, that's like A minor. You're just like, what the fuck is that? That sounds like an alarm in harmony with another alarm, or spaceship in harmony with another one, a broken one or whatever. So like, I mean, where do you start, like, I guess, with your structurally?
I think Tommy knows music a lot better than I do, so
so he's the real secret weapon.
He is the secret. Yeah, absolutely. There's things I think that move songs, create movement in them. And I always just like rhythm. I started playing bass when I was really young, and it's like, it was my first instrument. So I focus a lot on rhythm. And when I write with Scott, I try to get just sort of the core out of the way and then sort of pepper it with effects. And when I was, every punk band just plays drop D and plays the one finger thing, and you just move your finger around and just, whatever, creates a song.
I wish the people listening could see that.
Waving your index finger.
One finger moving.
Yeah, this is music right here.
Yeah.
And so I also wanted Def Club to be sort of stand out from everything else that I've done. I didn't want, if it was going to be power violence, if it was going to be grind, if it was going to be something, it wasn't just going to be the one, power chord moving around. Mm-hmm. So I started doing these weird chord shapes, and luckily Tommy knows how to move, his hands quick to, like, oh yeah, if you do this, then I could do this. And so we have sort of a language now in Def Club that it's sort of just our sound, and but it's weird when people are just so used to just playing one way. Every time I sort of join a band, I try to learn what they do, because when I joined AC/DC, like, I didn't know how to play that fast. I was just playing like in psych rock bands and, with effects and all these things. And Tommy could just nail it. Tommy's like, hey, here's this. And he'll give you, 50 ideas right away. And I also try to take what he does and go, yeah, but maybe just do 2 or 3. That way it moves the song forward. It does this. It creates melody.
Yeah, I probably have more ADD than anybody in the band, maybe, because I always want to be changing stuff even more. And Brian will kind of, like, when we're landing on my guitar parts kind of that are meant to complement everything, we kind of got to pull back a lot of times, because I'd be, like, doing too many things maybe sometimes.
Like too many things, like too many notes, or
that, or just different variations on things.
Like, how did it work in the Manx then for you? Because...
that was a whole, I don't know, we could do a whole, talk about that all day long. I don't know.
Or I mean, even like
Screaming Chicken
and stuff. I mean, I'm not disrespecting those bands. I like those bands, but
oh yeah, I don't know anything.
Screaming Chicken.
Oh, am I not supposed to talk about that? Oh, you're not in that band.
We can cut it out, right? Okay, cool.
Yeah, you gotta make a note.
Everybody knows you're in that band.
Nobody knows. I'm denying it up and down every time.
What about in Manx? And then wonder what the guy in
Screaming Chicken
does.
Yeah.
It's not you.
Why were you bringing that guy up?
I don't know.
I don't know what he does.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why I even mentioned that band. In the Manx, though, like, you had, I mean, it didn't seem like fucked up in the ADD kind of way. Like, you're just like, oh yeah, the whole package was weird.
Yeah.
Like,
so I mean, gosh, I could give you my whole musical history and why I ended up doing the Manx and its evolution and the things I was doing before the Manx, which was a lot more like Def Club, which was this band called Razzle Blaster that I had right before the Manx, and then that kind of fizzled, and I was like, fuck, man, it just took so much out of me, trying to get like a proper, like, nasty weirdo band off the ground, just trying out tons of members from Craigslist and stuff. So anyways,
yeah, like, there's your downfall right there.
Oh god, yeah, lots of stuff. So I ended up simplifying things and doing folk punk. So the Manx, I don't know if you guys even know this, but I played banjo, accordion, and stand-up bass.
Yeah. Which I think I saw you with your modified banjo. It was a guitar, but it had a banjo thing hooked up to it or something.
I think maybe one of the times you came, saw us, I maybe was still playing an acoustic banjo, but we were playing through like synth pedals.
No, I
and
saw you
shit.
play through a guitar, but it
Yeah.
had banjo
That was toward the end.
strings
Yes.
or something.
And then that evolved into like a weird like 5-string guitar with 8-string, a fat ass 8-string banjo thing. Like the Minx was just a hodgepodge of all kinds of garbage.
Yeah.
In
a good way, but like garbage is the fact that you were like experimenting. And
it was
and
very
maybe,
experimental,
Yeah.
like from the beginning, because I had never played folk music before, until the very end, because I was composing for electric accordion, stand-up bass, 5 vocals, all this stuff. So
he's a secret weapon. He's a genius.
Well, I don't know about that at all, because so is everybody in this band. Is how I feel. But so yeah, I don't even know where we are, or where we're going right now. Where were we?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's funny though, because like on the Def Club LP, which I think is fine and it has a couple good songs on it, but I think it wasn't until like we wrote the new EP where I was like, oh, finally we're figuring it out, because I there's parts of the LP where I'm like, dude, everybody's just soloing. This is like not acceptable, you know. Like, and when I say everybody, I mean also the drums. Like, it's just like, dude, what the fuck, man? Like, someone needs to pick a lane, and like kind of roll with it. Like maybe, but I mean, you can do that. Like, I mean, bands like the Locust or Dillinger Escape Plan, or I mean, there's a ton of bands that have just been like, or Phantomos, whatever, just like shit.
Right.
You're just like, what the fuck is happening?
Non-stop,
constantly,
yeah.
You know, like, so, not that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like I guess I was just like, we gotta figure it out and like reel someone in. Like everybody can solo, but not at once, you know. And that was kind of like what was happening, I think.
Yeah, it's tough. Sometimes you have to pull back from the composition, and because you're always so in it as an instrumentalist too, I think, and you just want to be fucking going all the time, especially if you're inspired by weird, crazy music like the Locust, Phantomos, Dillinger, and all this stuff, which I grew up on completely. So something happened in my brain a while ago where I'm like, if I'm not doing all this crazy stuff all the time, it's too boring, you know. But it's like you pull back, and something like the new EP that we're working on, it's like, oh, there's very just like kind of simple, consistent, cyclical parts that's all it needs to be. And now we're finally kind of like,
or like stuff where there is like a mid tempo, and you're like, oh, there's a normal drum beat, like
right.
that a normal
normal
human being
not
would play.
soloing, yeah.
And then there's these 2 cool sounds and guitars that are coming together in harmony somehow. That's so cool.
Yeah. You get to actually enjoy it because there's some space there. And
yeah, and it's funny too, because I think for me specifically, like coming from like Locust kind of stuff, I do, like, even with Luke, like when he'll like make these Planet B songs, and I'll be like, oh, this sounds crazy, and then we'll start fucking with tracks, and like he'll layer it with like a gazillion things, and I'll never be like, whoa, there's like some shit hidden in there that I can't hear until you isolate it.
Right.
And then I'm like, so maybe when you are writing, you know, Luke, or you, when you guys are writing your stuff, you're in it, you know, where like fresh ears would be like, that's cool, just stop there,
right,
like, you're good, and then instead you added fucking 4 other things on top of it, and you're like, I don't know what happened.
I think that happens a lot.
Yeah,
you lose
I mean,
yourself
that's
sometimes.
part of the process of even just because Tommy joined us during the LP and wrote all his parts, and it was, you know, basically the beginning of the pandemic and all that shit, and it's like we were trying to learn these songs, or trying to write all these things, and trying to figure out pedals and build from there. But he has like the perspective of like, he wasn't even on the first EP, and he loves the first EP.
Oh, the EP. Yeah.
And that was kind of just like 5
Right.
minute of just going at it, like,
but
Scott
it
and I
is very simple in a sense. You're like,
I think that's because I'm a poser, and like, you know, pop music is like, I think like, no matter what, like you need to have some sort of like hook or something that you enjoy and you can remember, and that other people can remember. Because if you're just playing sloppily, like, anyone could just do anything and make noise. You know, there has to be a purpose to what you're doing, you know. Or
a purpose? What do you mean?
Well, some people just like they have feedback during their entire set because they don't know how to manipulate feedback or whatever. Where Tommy and I were talking about this actually like the other day, where we want to have organized chaos. You know, if you have a sense of chaos where you're about to go over the edge, but you don't quite go there, you know, where you're pushing people, you know, you want them to feel like, holy shit, what's happening right now? But you have to be able to replicate that every time, you know, because
if you have control over the chaos, then you're a wizard.
Then it's not chaos.
Yeah.
But then it's just tension, right? Is that a better word? Maybe. 'Cause
Sure.
chaos is like tethered. You're just like, oh, what the fuck's happening? You know,
Sometimes it's chaos, just depending on the sound on the stage. But if you can't hear anything else, sometimes we're not actually playing chords. We're just playing the actual pedals. Totally. The effects or an oscillator or something weird.
What's that? Oh, go on. Sorry.
Or like Jason and Scott will be basically carrying the song while we're doing our thing. And we come back. And so when you come back, people are like, oh.
But even with Scott, though, it's like we got to reel him in because that guy just writes shit that he can't even play later on. And you're just like, you wrote that complicated thing, like.
But that's why he doesn't like playing the old songs now,
Yeah.
But now we're going towards, I think, like you said, for the new EP, going towards something that is a little bit more tailored. Like
we're picking the lane. We're finding a skin or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't want to throw either of you guys under your own buses because I know, but like your jam, like okay, Tommy, your jam's Guar, right? And then Brian, your jam's Nirvana.
Yeah.
So not fuck Guar, but like Guar, whatever. But with Nirvana, and I think you hate Nirvana, right, Luke?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he hates them. I don't hate Nirvana. I kind of hate like the vocals a lot, I guess. But I like the groove, and I like.
Just so you know, I did a lot of Kurt Cobain vocals on this LP, or the EP actually.
Oh yeah.
The style of Nirvana, and
I don't know. I never heard that.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say before you interrupted me. No, but I mean like for Nirvana, I think.
Jung just walked
Yeah.
in.
Like for Nirvana stuff, I thought, okay, it's fine, like Nevermind's fine, but it was like when In Utero came out, I was like, oh, because they had the groove and the hook, but then there was nastiness on it, and I thought there's no way that Nirvana could have done that record as their first major album. Like Nirvana, Nevermind had to come out before to get everyone hooked into it, and get them all fucking, hooked on the Nirvana train, and then they were like, here you go,
do whatever we want.
And then they fucked it up, and I think that was a really cool and beautiful thing because there's parts of that record where I'm like, this sounds like, the fucking early Black Dice or something. Like where you're just like, wow, there's like this feedback is so brutal and like not pleasant in a great artistic way, and I think that like I see that in your playing a lot. So there's that, but then like with you, like Tommy, I don't see like where I don't feel like you're just like, check out this kind of like Scumdogs riff,
Yeah.
I
mean, well,
but you took a lot from like Buckethead and
I have so many.
You play guitar much better than Def Club allows.
Sure. But kind of going back to what Brian was saying earlier about not being punk enough or not being this enough or not being that enough. But he really enjoyed a little bit of everything and kind of drew from all these different places, maybe even unexpected places. And that's like, that makes up who you are now creatively as an artist. It's very much that same way for me. I mean, like, and again, it's too much to get into, but like I grew up on, my first thing was Crisscross when I was 7 years old or something. That was the first music I ever really heard. My parents didn't listen to music in the house. It was always like sports radio. My mom was at work all the time. I never even heard music really until like Crisscross. And some kid at school had it. I was like, fuck yeah, Crisscross. And then it was like, whatever. I'm not going to go down the whole thing, but then it was like metal in my teen years. I didn't discover punk until I moved to LA really. So I was like 20 years old working at this place called Scooby's Hot Dogs on Hollywood Boulevard. Everyone there were all these punk kids with tattoos and chains and shit. And I was like, oh, Oingo Boingo, what is it? Just like Devo, Crucifix, Fear. This is the first time I heard this stuff when I was 20, so kind of late to the game. Because in my teen years, it wasn't like hard enough. It was like, what's this punk stuff? It's just kind of like light and kind of. But I didn't get it until a little bit later, of how like the attitude and how disgusting it could be. So that said, yeah, I mean like I love Guar, but like musically, it's just part of it. Maybe theatrically, that's like. A thing that I'm trying to bring to the table more with maybe some of the other projects I'm doing.
Okay. Yeah, like the one that you're not in.
Screaming Chicken.
Yeah, several other projects that I'm not doing.
Yeah. But I do think there's a lot of things in punk rock, like a lot of punk rockers won't be like, oh yeah, B-52s is punk as fuck, Blondie or it's like that's now people look at it and it's like, oh, that's pop music or whatever because it's so, well known,
widely accepted. And
but
stuff,
Talking Heads and like art punk stuff
Yeah.
and all those things, like those are super valid.
I mean,
aspects
it's
of
not
it.
really like punk when it's on a car commercial. You're just like, oh, okay, So stuff like Ramones or the Sex Pistols don't sound inherently punk now, but for the time they had to start it, and it was. And I do think that Talking Heads and even like coming back to like fucking Guar was definitely punk. I mean, even if it didn't sound like punk rock, and Nirvana, the same thing. I mean, Nirvana fucked up a lot of things in a cool punk ass way, and I think that was like really important. And I think that like even with like the stuff that Luke is always like bringing to the table with like elements of hip hop and stuff, I'm like, this is fucking punk. Like this shit is.
I mean, hip hop and punk are like the most
same.
valid forms of music in the last like 3-4 decades. The most important as far as like anything that's come out recently.
Like game changing or redefining stuff. I think maybe like redefining music. I suppose.
Absolutely,
for those two genres. And then because a lot of times when someone's like, this isn't punk or that isn't punk, it's like, but they're referencing shit that really is just like the quintessential, like, oh yeah, like this is supposed to be punk, but I like the stuff that's not supposed to be, the hidden shit where you're just like, oh yeah, that actually is, because the tattoos and the chains and shit like aren't really,
Right.
And it's funny
absolutely.
because the people that are holier than thou, it's like I wonder like how many people would say the crucifix aren't punk, if you, let's say, remove them from, they were on Alternative Tentacles, like, right? If they weren't on Alternative Tentacles, probably people would have dismissed them forever. But that fucking band, that was a game changer. They were the most fucked up punk rock band, or, like whatever. So I think that's like a pretty important, I guess, like detail on things, like what really is punk. Because I think when you start dismissing shit and like trying to be holier than thou, then you already fucked up, and you're the poser, you're the fuckhead, and like you should just
gatekeepers.
Totally.
Elitism in punk rock is a weird it's a no-go for me.
I mean, even for power violence, like that's just a crazy genre in itself, because who coined that term? Eric Wood. And Eric Wood says like the only power violence bands are the ones that, I think he rambles off on that Man is a Bastard Crossed Out split. He says it's the first time he says like, I think he says like power violence, and he says like Capital's Casualties and Crossed. I don't even know what bands, I can't remember, but and then he said that's it, and then it became a thing, and everyone's like, because I constantly was always told like the Locust isn't power violence, the Locust isn't grindcore, the Locust isn't this, and I'm like, you're right. Suck a dick. We're not any of that shit. And no, you don't care. Or we're all of it, and you're the loser, and it doesn't matter, like, because it really doesn't matter. And like, I don't want to be this, and I don't want, you guys to be the thing that they said you should be, like at the hot dog place or whatever, like just do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, that's the thing I have trouble keeping up with, even in these conversations, is like genres and like, this is D-beat, but it's not quite like crust enough or whatever. I'm just like, I don't even know. I just like all this stuff. And
Def Club is hardcore, and I'm like, all the other hardcore bands are hardcore, and I don't know what we are. Like we're much weirder. Just just the pedals alone, differentiate us. Just us now doing 3 vocals, all these things. It's the subject matter that we talk about isn't necessarily hardcore. Hardcore seems really testosterone driven and sort of masculine and whatever, and it's like, I always just kind of got beat up by these dudes. Like, I don't really, I don't know.
Well, there's like a lane that people have found, and they just stay in it. And I think that, like, for me, it's funny when we're at rehearsal, I'm always like, I want to play the fucking crusty D-beat shit, but then put like the sci-fi guitar sounds on top of it. Like what would, Discharge and Melt Banana sound like together? Like, that's the band that I want to be in. Like, marry these two things and then make something new. Like, that's cool. Where I think a lot of people are maybe afraid to do that.
Yeah, and people like to just kind of like jump on and sound like everyone else. That's the majority of music, and like I have a hard time getting down with any of that stuff. Like, for a long time I had trouble finding new bands to listen to because it needed to be 100% something that didn't sound like something else. So like, and I was like super snobby because of that. So I was always on the hunt for like something that just didn't exist yet, except for in this one place. Like Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum or something like that. Like, or Buckethead was like, what the fuck is this guy? Like, he's doing noise stuff. The Locust was one of those, like Dillinger, just stuff that's like, you can only go to this one place to get it. But then that shut me off from listening to a ton of different bands because, I don't know, all these ones over here, they just kind of sound like the same as all these other ones over here, you know.
I don't listen to music. I hate music. I fucking totally hate it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I'm just here all fucking day. So when I'm like, when I hear music, I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, I just want peace and quiet and like nothing. Or like classical music is like, I can just do that all day.
Yeah.
But I do relate with you, but not noise wise. Like, my hatred for Nirvana stems from one, being really high in junior high, and I was in a jazz band, and I was just like all into like learning. I went from like metal into classical and jazz, and I remember just being so high and just like thinking of jazz music and all the notes and all these fucking chords, and then Nirvana comes with jung jung, and and everybody fucking loved it. And I was just remember just being so high and being like just staring at the world and everybody loving this shit.
Wow.
And I was like, there's so much, like, I'm like, people are getting dumber and dumber, and the music is like declining. But over the years, it's like, with like Michael Jordan, I can give a shit about him, but I know he was a great basketball player. So I know what Nirvana did for music, and I know the mark that they made. It's just I cringe because it takes me back.
So maybe it wasn't even like Nirvana's fault. They were just the one that.
No, they were doing their thing.
There was an implication of like just the shitty things that were to come, or the
totally
I
the
feel,
de-evolution of people.
I know I get a lot of shit from everyone, but I feel the same way about the Beatles. I just kind of just never got into them, you know. So we're from Argentina, you know, my parents are from Argentina, and I grew up with like opera, like Luciano Pavarotti and sort of Fabuloso Skylarks and ska and reggae and Lee Scratch Perry and all these like other elements everywhere, you know. And there's so many things musically that you could get into, where punk is just one thing, and yeah, I love it, but I don't listen to it ever when I'm at home, you know. I'm not ever like if I'm in a tour van and we're listening to like they were listening to Slipknot the other time that we were coming up, and I was just like, my brain was just like, dude, I can't just listen to heavy music all the time, you know. And but
heavy music.
But even like, you know, I got into like Bitches Brew, Miles Davis, and you know, Maggot Brain, and all these like records that kids really didn't like, or Frank Zappa, or like, you know, Sonic Youth was a huge influence on me besides Nirvana too, and sort of drone music, and, you know, sort of experimental things, and I think there's so many valid forms of music, and if you just limit yourself, you're just going to create a very limited amount of music as well. So
like if you only listen to this, you're just gonna regurgitate.
That's where you're gonna shit it out later, you know. And so I do think Def Club, there's like some things that I could pinpoint that I'm like, oh, that's a little bit of like my Latin heritage, you know, that's Spanish. That groove right there is from me listening to these bands, you know, and where other people might not catch it. But some of my friends, you know, that have known me forever, they'll be like, hey, I heard that song. This sounds like, you know, this from this band. I'm like, oh, you caught it, you know. You know, like there's a lot of experimental bands like Café Tacuba, you know, they did a lot of great experimental records. Caifanes, Jaguares, all these things that, you know, you grow up with in other countries that influence you as well. And America, you know, it's very limited, and it has to sell you these things. Where Nirvana, I think I was 8 years old when he died, and I wasn't into them, you know. I just remember that they played Unplugged in New York on MTV over there in Argentina. I was living in Argentina, and I was like, oh, I like this band. And I came and I bought the first record, Bleach, and it said, this is Nirvana's first record. So I was like, oh, this must be the best one or whatever. And I didn't know, and it was heavy as shit, you know. And then I was like, all right, well, this is not the one that has the single, Smells Like Teen Spirit. But then I got into so many other things because of that, you know. I also just hated cock rock, you know. I hated Motley Crue, I hated Guns N' Roses, I hated all this like Sunset Strip fucking bullshit, you know.
Which I think like there's more of an important thing than like the actual notation and the structure of the songs, like the cultural relevance, which I think Nirvana played a big part. They were going against something that I think needed to happen, and it was this thing that happened. It needed to happen in the lineage of music, you know.
In general, just grunge, even, you know, when you take something, or even like Sinead O'Connor ripping the Pope picture, you know, on SNL, or Pearl Jam writing, you know, pro-choice on their arms, or like Bikini Kill and Riot Girl.
The Riot Girl
you
movement
know,
was a
the
big
Riot Girl movement, and how sort of feminist movements and punk rock movements and sort of Olympia, Washington, not just Seattle, Washington, but Olympia, you know, K Records and all these other things. And those are like important forms where a lot of like hardcore kids, they're like, they hate female fronted, quote unquote, or just any female bands. They're just like, yeah, they're all right for girls, but if it was, you know, guys, they'd be much better. And you're just like, you fucking suck, dude. Like hardcore bros are just, you know, they're sort of just annoying in that way. And I just always, I wanted to not be a bro. I wanted to not be masculine. I didn't want to be like just a dude, you know. So I got into music that I guess is, you know, not considered as, you know, metal was heavier. I did get into like Korn and some of that new metal stuff for a little bit, but I got out of it real quick because I was like, this is bullshit. Like, you know, there's some good bands like Rage Against the Machine, you know, the Politics and stuff like that, but for the most part, you know, if you see that documentary on Woodstock or, you know, you're like, oh, this fucking sucks. This era of music sucked. And it was a big wasteland for a long time, you know?
That documentary will make you not like music.
Oh, yeah.
Like, dude, there's so many things in there that were just terrible. And I'm like, why am I even a human being? This is like boner, dude. I don't want to be part of this thing culturally or whatever. But
it's weird.
I mean, it is funny though. Like, I do appreciate the sneaking in of things. Like, even when Luke was putting together the Satanic Planet tracks, like there's a cumbia on there, and it's like like, I guarantee you 99.4% of the satanic, you know, Satanist or whatever, you know, like don't know like that's cumbia, you know. They're probably just like Hail Satan, you know. And there's like this awesome cumbia
but I think if you take it like you know, a lot of goth kids, like a lot of people, let's say like cholo goth, right? You know, if you take cholo goth and
is that a real thing then? Like, or is it? I thought it was just a
well, no, I mean, if you just take like
no comment.
Punk rock Latinos, basically, you know, and you're like, oh yeah, like I like Morrissey or The Cure or Bauhaus or Joy Division or whatever, and you put that in a Satanic Planet song, like I guarantee there's a good amount of Latin people that are listening to that song and going like, oh yeah, this is a cumbia. You know what I mean? Like I'd be able to pick out like this is a cumbia, you know, like or this is a salsa rhythm or this is a whatever. But that's because I grew up with it, you know.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a bunch of kids that are being represented when you throw those things in, you know.
But I wonder, like, because maybe, I mean, not to like date everybody here, but like maybe for like Luke and I, like, or I don't know, maybe like when I was growing up, I remember like being able to go to the record store and I would buy, you know, I could buy like let's see, like Lard and Bauhaus, and that would make sense, you know, or like, you know, what is that, like industrial and like goth and like it just and I was a punker with a mohawk, like that all like makes sense to me, like. But I feel like the younger generation, like people that were like 10 years younger than me, like didn't have the sort of ability to do that. It was like everything was like very more like structured and more narrow, like you had to fit into this like realm of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you see that? Like, did you guys see that when you were growing up?
In middle school, everyone, the same thing we were talking about. Yeah, it's like I was wearing Doc Martens one time, but I also had like kind of like baggy skater jeans, and this dude is like, what are you, a skater or a rocker? Like he said that. He was like visibly confused.
Why can't
over
you
this.
be both?
Yeah. I'm just like, I don't know. I just like thought this was cool.
But for me growing up, skaters and rockers was the same thing.
Yeah. I don't know. So there were always these gatekeepers. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's confusing, and I haven't really expended any energy on ever trying to like adhere to anything. I just kind of do my thing.
I think now though, like kids are more open to it, you know.
It feels that way.
At least because of, like at the record store at midnight hour, when kids come in and they buy different things, I'm like, whoa, like you like this old stuff, you like this new stuff, like, but they'll still be jamming on Selena and Vicente Fernandez and Julio Iglesias and all these like Spanish things that they grew up with because of their parents, you know. And I appreciate my parents in that respect because, you know, my mom liked like T-Rex and David Bowie and Queen, and my dad was like, you know, opera and Argentine folk music and stuff like that. But they let me do my own thing, except, you know, then Sergio, my brother, he got into punk and started wearing all black and, you know, crusty stuff, and he got arrested, and then my dad took away all our black clothing. I was like, nope, no more black clothing, you guys are gonna get in trouble. And it was like we just got into every sort of music. I didn't even know music. I would go to Tower Records and buy an album just because of the cover,
yeah.
or the titles of the songs.
Yeah.
Totally.
And
I have bought a lot of bad records that way.
and a lot of
when I
bad
was a
records
child.
too, for sure.
But Tower Records was the jam. You could go there and be like, well, this is some weird ass shit.
Yeah.
And like, that's cool.
I got arrested there too, but
Most of my friends did.
Yeah.
You did.
No,
No, you
Nope.
didn't get arrested there?
no,
Oh.
no. I got away. I was slick.
But you would have.
It's funny because, like, for me, it was a couple things. Like, I remember you brought up, Total Chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember my first band, Struggle, played with them, and I thought they were cool looking. You know, I thought they were fine. Like, they were fine or whatever. I think I had one of their records, and I was like, they're cool. Like, they're punks. And I went to this. There was this Long Beach anarchist convention at the college, like Long Beach. I don't know what it was. The university right there by the start of the freeway, like that college. And you know, it was like all these classes, and you could go learn about like anarchism and feminism and animal rights, all the important things that I think I was 16, I guess, that I needed to learn. And I remember like going to the classes and like, cool, like this is like, I'm gonna learn these things. I'm gonna like talk to these people and like and educate myself. And Total Chaos showed up, the singer, I forgot his name, you know, and he looked cool as fuck, you know, like spiked hair and whatever. And he was like talking some shit to one of his bandmates, and they like kicked him, and they were like talking, you know, like whatever. And like the dude started crying and shit, and it was like, fuck you. And I was like, man, like I was like, punk is dead, you know, like this is some bullshit. And it was really important to like to be able to see these people that were my, I don't want to say my peers, but they were like, you know, they were like a bit older than me, and they were the people that were kind of like he was very popular, and I was like, he's a fucking moron. Like, I'm gonna do my thing, and like, not that I'm cooler or whatever, but I, you know, it was really, I really needed to see that happen. This guy getting embarrassed, because then I could say like, oh, because my other friends like Born Against and Downcast and stuff, like they're the real punks. They're the ones that I can like totally relate to and respect, and that are respectable human beings. They're not a fucking joke, you know. They're not like a commodity. And that was the cool thing, you know. They didn't look like like
street,
you know,
punk
Sam
shit,
McPheeters like didn't look as cool as the guy from Total Chaos, but like Sam McPheeters is fucking awesome. Like, and you can't, there's no competition. The other guy's a chump, you know. Like, there it is. Like, I already figured it out. Like at 16, and I was like so grateful for that, you know. So I don't know. Those lessons are important, I think, where you can like almost like destroy what you're supposed to look at as an idol or something, you know.
Yeah.
Just sort of staying true to yourself. The longevity factor also. If you play in bands long enough, then you're like, all right, well, at least I'm in it, and I'm, you know, you're not making money, you're not in it for this, but you have to do it. And you know, all those kids that like, you know, called you names or whatever, or like, you know, beat you up, is like, oh, what are they doing? They got 9-to-5 jobs and they're doing bullshit, you know. Like, sucks for you drinking Bud Light at home, dude. Like, I don't know. You know?
But also, like, I think on a cultural relevant level, like, because I remember being out, I forgot how old, I was probably 13 or 14, and I went to see, this is the craziest time. I remember, like, I went to see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 in the movie theater with my friend Jose Palafox, he's Mexican, he has a mohawk, he looks like we both looked pretty, I had like blue hair, we looked like very punk rock. And my mom, you know, she was an alcoholic and didn't pick us up from the theater, so we were like stuck at this movie theater, and we had to walk from the sports arena to Claremont. It was a long time, you know. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and we're, you know, these two like 13-year-old kids, and we get pulled over by the cops, you know, and the cops are like immediately start making fun of us, you know, like, what the fuck, like, what are you guys, are you guys skinheads? And like, I was wearing a Nazi Punks Fuck Off shirt, you know, and I'm like, okay, you know, and then Jose has a gigantic mohawk, you know, and I'm like, we're clearly not skinheads, you know, what are you guys, fags? And we're like, well, I mean, I guess you could call us that. I mean, that would be like the obvious thing. Didn't say like we're straight or what, you know, like whatever, but we did say we fucking hate Nazis, you know, like put two and two together. And so I started figuring out like the like cultural relevance of punk rock, you know, and punk, and that was an important lesson as well, like to go like you know, against stereotypes and norms and authority figures and things like that, which I think were important to learn, and then try to like find the nuances of navigating through life with those things, musically or just culturally, you know. So yeah, I don't know. Those are weird ones. But you mentioned Fear. I think that was a really good that's a great example too, because they are kind of like almost like the quintessential punk band because of the like nastiness.
Yeah.
But if you listen to their records, they're so fucking tight. They
yeah.
they have like a lot of jazz shit. Like they're kind of like the Dead Kennedys, where you're like, dude, Dead Kennedys were really talented. Like they weren't just dicking around. Like, I don't know, what's a band that just like did, you know, I mean, no offense, but like Ramones weren't like that technically proficient, or like Minor Threat wasn't like that, you know. But when you look at like Dead Kennedys or Fear or something, where you're like, dude, the musicianship is intense.
And they're doing interesting stuff too that you don't hear from any other bands.
But
so,
did they get? I wonder if people were like, Jello, you're not a punk. You know, you're like, what the fuck? You know, like you can't. Like maybe it was different then. You know, maybe you could get away with it. I guess at that point. But I wonder if other genres of music have that. You know, I wonder if hip hop, where people are like, you're not hip hop or you're not this. You know, like.
I think it. I think all music probably does. It's just the snobs who, like you said, who try to define it. Once you define it, then you're kind of like,
That's where
like
you messed
I
up.
would get it if it was like country, and he'd be like, yeah, that's not hip hop. Yeah, fucking of course it's not hip hop. But I don't know.
But now they did that. What's his name? Was it Lil Nas X?
Lil Nas
Oh
X.
yeah,
Country Road.
and it blew up.
Yeah. I mean, but that was, and I don't really like that music, but I think like, damn man, that's the. I'm glad that guy did it. Like that's cool. Like that needed to happen.
I think it depends in every genre. I mean, hip hop too. It's like you have like conscious hip hop, you have experimental hip hop, industrial hip hop. You have, so you could still fit into like these little weird things. Like I always like Saul Williams as a lyricist more. I like Cool Keith because he was weird. You know, Dr. Octagon, all these like weirdo takes on hip hop. You know, and it's like, oh, that's a lot of fun. You know, and
I think it's more like there's punk, hip hop. I think the only style that fans don't budge is probably metal.
Yeah.
Like metal fans are true to metal, and if you fucking stray away, you're a faggot.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, they get real uppity about it.
yeah.
Well, then that's weird too, because like, how do you feel about Guar? Because that's metal, and they I mean, I wonder how they navigate in their careers.
I don't know.
You know?
They're one in a million, you know. Like they're the only ones doing exactly that particular brand, and then coming with
Ghoul.
But Ghoul is completely derivative of Guar.
Oh, sure, yeah. But they were friends, right? They were like,
yeah, for sure.
They did the costumes for Guar, and then they started Ghoul. Yeah.
I don't know if that's
like
true.
that, yeah.
I know Guar has their own slave pit, and they do whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Guar, I mean, Odorous. Dave Brockie was such a smart lyricist. I don't know if you guys are familiar with his stuff, really. Like, but there's like the satire. It's so hilarious and depraved, and meant to throw America's bullshit back in its own face, and it works every time and pisses people off and makes people think about all these issues from A to Z, you know. Yeah.
That was another thing too, is I saw Guar in Tijuana when I was like around 14, I guess, or 15, and I remember there was this place, Iguanas, and there was always neo-Nazis there, and it was crazy that these skinheads would show up there, and I don't know if it was like part of Guar's like thing that they always did, or that that Nazi skinheads were showing up at their shows. Oh. But so, you know, for one, we're in Mexico, and they were Nazis. They had swastikas on their shirts and shit like that, and they were sea-kyling, you know. And so part of the Guar like shtick for this set was they brought out this skinhead, and he was sea-kyling, and he had pink suspenders.
Yeah.
So you know about that? Yeah.
Yeah, they do that. Yeah.
It was fucking awesome.
Yeah, and then they chop off his head or whatever. Yeah.
Because he was gay.
Oh! I don't remember. I know I've seen that, but
so the skinhead comes out and he's like sea-kyling, and all the skinheads are sea-kyling, and they're like, "Fuck yeah!" And then so they're like, I don't know which guy, the main guy in Guar, was like, "Wait a minute, he's a fag, or he's gay," and they chopped his head off. And then the neo-Nazis in the crowd were bummed,
right?
And it wasn't that Guar was like homophobic; they were just trying to fuck with these shitheads, and they did a great job, because I watched all of them just get bummed and get super violent. Yeah, you know, I mean, that might have not been the what they were trying to go for, but like, I just think they wanted to say something, and they did, and maybe it wouldn't really work in 2021 or 2022 that's coming up, but like, I think that it was like they made a point to fuck with this chunk of their audience, and I think that was really cool, you know. And also it's like they are a metal band, and they're gimmicky and sci-fi monstery. Why are Nazis here? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, it's not really for them. Like,
right.
It was so.
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, I think metal brings a lot of people who aren't hip to the joke to the shows, and then a lot of people
because testosterone and things.
Yeah, and Guar too. It's tough to say because I feel like there are fans who like really get, oh, there's a lot more to this. It's intellectual on like a deep level, and then there are people who are just like, oh, monsters, blood, cool, you know. And then those people are intermingling.
But I think the best form of music is sort of bands that kind of take the piss out of their crowd a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, they kind of, you have to have that. You know, it's like.
But what about like you know, I love Judas Priest, and I think Rob Halford's awesome, and he's a great singer, and I think that, you know, was it Painkiller? What's the song? Anyhow,
Painkiller.
Yeah, Painkiller. That's a killer song, you know. Anyhow, he's great. San Diego, you know, pride right there. But he, you know, like if you watch Heavy Metal Parking Lot, is that there's like, you know, like there's one woman that they're interviewing, and they're like, KK Dowling or whatever his name is, like, I'd bone him, or but Rob, I don't know. And it's like, because he's gay, like, but no one knew at the time. But it was cool how like it became okay for them. I mean, maybe they lost fans, but like,
good.
Totally.
Fuck those
but it's
fans,
such a, I mean, and like, but I mean, like, you can't fuck with Judas Priest. Like, they were like quintessential metal. They were really fucking good, and the singer just so happened to be gay. Like, doesn't make them any different. And like, all those people that bought those records, like, oh well, joke's on them.
Yeah, it was like a Trojan horse situation.
Kind of, yeah.
There's a lot of that asshole shit though. I mean, they're like, oh yeah, or with politics especially, like, oh, musicians shouldn't be political. It's like punk rock shouldn't. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, have you read those, you know, Rage Against the Machine lyrics? They like, you know, you see Tom Morello talk shit like, hey, do you not know what this band is about?
Yeah.
You know, and even in punk rock, like, you have now conservative punk, or, you know, sort of like that whole MAGA punk shit, and you're like,
what?
How's this punk rock?
That's a real thing?
Just how they basically it's sort of like libertarian punk shit, where they're like, we get to say whatever the fuck we want because this is truly punk rock. It's sort of like G.G. Allin type of shit. Like, if you come to my shows, I'm gonna, you know, rape you and shit on you and do whatever I want because this is the real punk rock. And you're like, maybe I'm not punk rock, man. You know, maybe I don't want those things to happen to other people. You know, and you know, or just in general, you know, hardcore kids that are offended when you're like, hey, we should have a safe space for people. You know, I'm fully for the whole Bikini Kill, like, you know, girls to the front, like, you should be able to have a safe space and not have a bunch of people, you know, bust your shit or, like, you know, molest you or do all these things. It's fucked up.
But G.G. Allin is, I mean, like,
sure,
that's a different because, like, you know, I feel like that was like, even like, I wouldn't even say it was like nihilism. It's like that G.G. had to happen for the sake of whatever kind of culture, you know. But I mean, like, you didn't go there. You're like, okay, wait a minute, like, there might be Nazis there. You just like go there and you're like, I'm gonna have to just not get someone's human shit on me, you know. Like, I don't care if there's a fucking Nazi, like, and there are a bunch of Nazis, but like, I just don't want to get someone's poop on me, you know? And that was like the most important thing, and I think that was like an interesting thing. And it wasn't that he was like, you know, like, Gigi wasn't homophobic, you know, he fucked his brother and shit, you know, like, that's just, it's like, whatever, you got that going for you. So I wonder, like, the MAGA stuff or whatever you're saying, like, you know, it just seems like a bunch of fucking asshole white people. Yeah,
they think that they should have the ability to offend everyone with whatever lyrics they say, and it's like, no, you're borderline, like, you know, it's like Burzum or, like, you know, like, sort of black metal Nazis, you know, and you're just like, this is fucking whack, dude. Like, I don't know what's happening right now, you know. It's like, but then again, you know, are you supposed to take any of this music seriously, you know, like,
or Screwdriver? It's like, oh yeah, you guys are all playing like rhythm and blues, and, you know, like, I mean, and everyone, you know, people that even defend Screwdriver, they're like, well, the first record when they weren't racist is, you're like, that shit is even worse, you know. Like, the racist stuff at least was funny. I think, like, that was a joke of a band too, and ended well, you know. The singer was decapitated. You can't beat that. You know. So I don't know.
Hopefully, you know, I think you said it, or one of the things said about Def Club was like, at least offend someone or do something, you know, like, at least get an emotion out of someone, you know.
Oh yeah, if you don't, apathy lost. And you're like, oh yeah, that one's all right.
Indifference of everything, and that's what I feel about most music. It's like indifference. I mean, I do love a lot of music, a lot of underground music, and I think music is still very healthy, even though YouTube and Spotify and all these things exist where, you know, people are fed all this music, but you could find it a lot easier now than when we had to go to a record store and just look at song titles or whatever, you know. We're just maybe a lot more picky now or something.
Spoiled?
I'm not really picky now. I like a lot of music. I don't know. Yeah, it just depends.
I don't like anything. I just listen to NPR.
I don't get to listen to anything either, Luke. Like kind of like you were saying, it's like I do music stuff all day long, and then at the end of it, I'm just like I can't like digest anymore right now. Yeah. So I need to take a break, pretty much.
Even with like TV, I'll find myself analyzing the music like on a commercial, and I'm
totally.
like, motherfucker,
just chill.
Like, oh, that's that chord, or look at that rhythm, and I'm like, oh,
Same.
just turn this shit off.
Yeah, I know.
It's like constantly working.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But I think also like things like Netflix and all these things have made me dumber, and so I just. When I used to be, not only did I listen to weird music, like I would read William Burroughs and, watch weird art house films. And I think that inspired me to be a weirdo more and to write weirdo shit and it sort of translates still. Where, like, I feel like I should read a lot more now than I've been reading, It would probably influence us in different ways for how we create things.
Oh, so you're saying you spend too much time watching stuff?
I do now, yeah. And it's made it that I'm really lazy, and so I'm trying to consciously change that, and maybe that'll make Def Club a little bit even weirder, but who knows, or we'll just let Tommy write the next album.
We could do that too. I find myself doing the same thing. I kind of just like zone out after, because we're working all day long on like this band, that band, record label or shop, whatever, and then it's just like I just want to like chill out and just like zone out, put something on, even if it's a movie I've seen 8 million times. That's preferable. Because it's like, this is just keeping me company. It's like an old friend, and I can just like decompress for a minute. So the idea of like reading or exercising after a long day of all this stuff is like, fuck. It's a whole thing to like muster up the courage to do.
Because you have to be engaged.
Yeah, exactly. Because usually I'll wrap up work it'll be like from when I wake up until like 2 a.m. or something, and I'll just be like, oh God, I just like, where am I right now? Yeah. Frazzled. But same thing. I haven't been reading, and I think that's like largely in part of like my lifestyle of just like having so many projects lately.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yeah,
but worth it ultimately. Yeah. I think like we're still doing what we want to do, and
yeah, we were talking about that on the way here. It's like it's tough being super ambitious
and super lazy. Yeah. I'm a ambitious procrastinator.
Mm-hmm. Man, I'm gonna say like I would never tag either of you guys. Well. Tommy, there's no way I'd say you're lazy, but Brian, I would never say you're lazy, like ever.
Yeah, I feel like I'm super lazy though.
Wow, man. You're always like, we're gonna do this, and we're organizing this, and this thing's happening, and this, and I'm like, well, okay, you got it together, man. Like,
no, that's just because my brain is everywhere, and so I have to write it down and put it in my phone and put notes and do this and organize, or else I just forget everything, Like, also my phone has just made me dependent on it, Mm-hmm. So it's like, wait, when do I practice, and when do we do these shows, and who do we have to call, and when do we post this thing on social media? And it's just fucking.
But it's great.
Like it's programming me versus me programming it, And it's.
But you're a great resource to have, because if I ever have any questions, I just hit up Brian and I'm like, okay, cool. Brian knows. I'll just hit him up. Yeah, it's very helpful.
But that's also why I don't like. So Tommy said something really interesting the other day, where he said, when you're at the studio, it's for rehearsing, and when you're at home, it's for practicing. Where I never practice at home. Like, I really dislike my guitar. I don't like touching it. I'm just like, whatever, it's there. I know how to play it. But like, if I'm not playing with pedals or like playing in a live setting with other members and sort of, with the drummer or something, I almost never touch it. And then I get to rehearsal and I'm like, what was that part? Where Tommy doesn't do that. Tommy practices at home, and when he gets to rehearsal, he's like, I know all my parts.
Wow.
And so it's
it's beneficial.
It's beneficial.
It helps everyone else in the band too, because then they don't have to worry about you learning your part on the spot and all that stuff. It's just like logistics. It's just everyone doesn't have time.
Do you want to join the Locust? Because I am.
You're having that trouble.
We go through that every time we get together. We're like,
oh yeah.
What the fuck?
What's that part?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just go over it before you come to practice for an hour, and then come and you'll have it.
Some of us don't have the hour before.
I know. You got to make the hour. It's like making time to read. I got to pee so bad. Okay. Is there a place to go?
Yeah, you should pee, and we could just stop right now, and you could just pee. And
That's a great ending.
Great.
Yeah, we'll just end it right there. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, there it is. Go pee.
Okay, I really gotta go. I've had to go for a while.
Colton Culture is proudly sponsored by Earthquaker Devices.
Planet B.